My mother tricked me into a family meeting. When I arrived, lawyers were already there, ready to force me to sign everything over. When I refused to hand over the inheritance, they threatened me. I just smiled and said, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You represent a lot of people against one woman. Then I texted only one message to my contact waiting outside. Now, before I tell you what happened, when those doors burst open, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever had to stand alone against the people who were supposed to protect you. My name is Serena, and at 32 years old, I am one of the top mergers and acquisitions attorneys in Chicago. I spend my days dissecting failing companies and negotiating multi-million-dollar deals with sharks who would eat their own young for a profit. I thought I had seen every dirty trick in the book, every manipulation tactic, every desperate claw for money. But nothing could have prepared me for the ambush my own mother set up in a private VIP room at the Palmer House Hilton. It started with a voicemail at 7 in the morning. My mother Bernice sounded weak, her voice trembling in a way that set off alarm bells I should have ignored. She said, "Just a Sunday brunch, Serena. I made shrimp and grits, the kind you like. We need to heal. We need to be a family again." I hesitated. I sat on the edge of my bed in my penthouse looking out at the gray Chicago skyline, debating whether to delete the message. But then I thought of my father, James. Before he passed away from cancer 6 months ago, he had squeezed my hand with a grip surprisingly strong for a dying man, and made me promise to try. "Try to keep the family from falling apart, Serena," he had whispered. "Even when they make it hard." Because of that promise, I dressed in my sharpest power suit, grabbed my Birkin bag, and drove my Range Rover downtown instead of ignoring them like my instincts screamed to do. Bernice had insisted on the hotel, claiming she wanted a neutral, upscale atmosphere for a fresh start. I walked through the gilded lobby of the Palmer House, my heels clicking on the marble, mentally preparing for an hour of passive-aggressive comments about my career or my lack of a husband. I was wrong. It was not going to be passive. When the waiter opened the heavy double doors to VIP room 4, the first thing that hit me was the smell. It was not the savory aroma of shrimp and grits. It was the cloying scent of cheap perfume mixed with the stale, nervous sweat of desperate people. And there was absolutely no food. The room was set up like a tribunal. My mother sat at the head of the long mahogany table, her hands clutching her rosary beads, as if she were praying for my soul, though I knew she was praying for my signature. To her right sat Dante, my 35-year-old brother, wearing a bright yellow suit that was definitely a knockoff Versace, his legs propped up on the table with an arrogance he had never earned. Next to him was Tiffany, his wife. Tiffany was the only white woman in the room, her platinum blonde hair perfectly coiffed, wearing a smile that did not reach her cold, calculating eyes. And across from them sat 2 men I did not know. They wore ill-fitting gray suits and had stacks of legal documents spread out before them like weapons of war. "Sit down, Serena," my mother commanded. Her voice had lost the morning's frailty. It was sharp now, the voice of a woman who believed she was doing God's work even when she was sinning. "We need to settle this once and for all." I did not sit. I stayed by the door, keeping my hand on the brass handle. I checked my Rolex, making sure they saw the movement. "I have exactly 15 minutes, Mother. Where is the brunch you promised? And who are these men?" "These are attorneys. Johnson and Miller." Dante sneered, flashing a smile that revealed his gold-capped tooth. "They are here to help you do the right thing, little sister." "The right thing." I repeated, my voice flat. Tiffany stood up, then smoothing down her designer dress. She pushed a thick binder across the polished wood table toward the empty chair they wanted me to take. "Serena, sweetie, we all know how busy you are. You have your big fancy career, your high-rise apartment. You do not have time to manage the Legacy Jazz Club. It is a burden, really. A dusty old relic in a neighborhood that is changing. Dante and I have been talking, and we have a vision." I stared at her. The Legacy Jazz Club was not just a relic. It was the heart of Bronzeville. My father had bought that building 40 years ago. He had nurtured it, protected it, and turned it into a sanctuary for jazz musicians and the community. It was worth $8.5 million, not including the intellectual property rights to the vintage recordings in the vault. And this woman who had never stepped foot in Bronzeville until she started dating my brother was calling it a burden. "What kind of vision, Tiffany?" I asked, my tone dropping several degrees. "Well," she said, her eyes lighting up with a disturbing enthusiasm. "We want to modernize. We want to gut the interior, get rid of that dark, smoky vibe. We are thinking of a wellness complex, a high-end yoga studio on the top floor, and a vegan cafe on the ground level. To help civilize the neighborhood. The new residents moving in, they want kale smoothies, Serena. They do not want sad saxophone music from old men. Civilize the neighborhood." The insult was so casual, so steeped in a gentle kind of racism, that she probably did not even realize she had said it. She wanted to erase my father's legacy to serve the wave of gentrification sweeping through our community. "My father left the legacy to me in his will for a reason," I said, my voice cutting through the air like a knife. "He knew I would protect it. And the answer is no. It will never be a yoga studio. Not while I am breathing." "You are being selfish." My mother slammed her hand on the table, the rosary beads clattering against the wood. "Your brother is the man of this family now. He needs to lead. He needs capital. You have everything, Serena. You have money status. Why must you hoard your father's inheritance when your brother is suffering?" "Suffering?" I looked at Dante. He was checking his reflection in a spoon, looking bored. "He is in trouble, Serena." My mother's voice cracked, shifting into the guilt-inducing tone she had perfected over decades. "He owes money. Bad money. $450,000. If he does not pay by the end of the month, they are going to hurt him. They might even send him to prison." "Can you live with that? Can you sleep at night in your silk sheets, knowing your only brother is rotting in a cell because you wouldn't sign a piece of paper?" I looked at Dante again. 450,000. "Let me guess," I said. "Crypto. Or did you go back to the poker tables?" "It was an investment," Dante shouted, jumping up. His face flushed. "I just had some bad luck, that is all. But this yoga idea, it is a gold mine. We already have a developer interested. We already took the deposit." Tiffany blurted out, then clamped her hand over her mouth. The room went dead silent. I looked from Tiffany to Dante, then to my mother. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. "You did what I asked," softly. "We took a deposit," Dante said, puffing out his chest, trying to regain control. $200,000 cash. From the developers. They want to start demolition next month. The money is gone, Serena. I had to pay off some people. So you have to sign. If you do not transfer the deed to me today, I cannot deliver the building, and they will kill me. Do you understand? You have to save me." One of the lawyers, the one named Johnson, leaned forward. He had the greasy look of a man who chased ambulances for a living. "Ms. Davis, I would advise you to sign. Your mother, as the executor of the estate, has the right to challenge the original distribution if she feels it was unfair. If you refuse, we will tie this asset up in litigation for years. We will sue you for undue influence, claiming you manipulated your dying father. Your reputation in the city will be ruined. No firm will want a partner who defrauded her own family." I looked around the room. It was a perfect trap. They were using emotional blackmail, financial desperation, and legal threats all at once. My mother was sobbing now, real tears, or fake, it did not matter. She was weaponizing her motherhood. Tiffany was glaring at me, her mask of kindness gone, revealing the greed underneath. Dante looked like a cornered rat. They thought they had me. They thought I was just a daughter, a sister, someone who would crumble under the weight of family obligation. They forgot what I did for a living. They forgot that I destroy people who try to cheat me for breakfast. I took a deep breath and smoothed the lapel of my blazer. I did not look at the papers. I looked them each in the eye, one by one. 1, I pointed at my mother. 2, I pointed at Dante. 3, I pointed at Tiffany. 4, 5, I pointed at the 2 lawyers. You are a lot of people, I said, my voice eerily calm. 5 people to force one woman to sign a piece of paper. You must feel very powerful right now. Dante laughed nervously. We are family, Serena. We just want what is fair. Fair, I repeated. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. The screen lit up in the dim room. I did not open my contacts to call the police. I did not call a friend for help. I opened my messaging app and typed a single word to a number I had saved for this exact moment. Now, I hit send. Who are you texting? Dante demanded, leaning over the table. You better not be calling the cops. You are not leaving this room until you sign that transfer. I dropped my phone onto the table with a clatter. I am not calling the cops, Dante. I do not need the cops for this. Before he could respond, the heavy double doors of the VIP room did not just open, they vibrated. Someone was not knocking. Someone was coming in, and they were not asking for permission. The handle turned and the doors swung wide, slamming against the walls with a sound like a gunshot. My mother screamed. Tiffany jumped out of her chair. Dante froze. Standing in the doorway were not waiters with brunch. Standing there were 5 men in dark coats holding thick envelopes in their hands. They were process servers, and behind them, holding a camera to document everything, was my head of security. I looked at my family, whose faces had gone from arrogant to terrified in the span of 3 seconds. I told you, I said, picking up my bag. You are a lot of people. So I brought enough for everyone. This was not a brunch. This was a war. And I had just fired the first shot. The silence that followed the slamming of the doors was heavier than the oak table between us. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. My mother's mouth hung open, her prayer beads frozen in mid-rotation. Dante's legs dropped from the table with a clumsy thud. Tiffany looked like a deer caught in the headlights of a semi-truck. The 5 men who entered did not wait for an invitation. They moved with the synchronized precision of a military unit. They were not law enforcement, but in the corporate world, they were almost worse. They were the messengers of ruin. One of them, a tall man with a stone face, walked straight to my mother. He did not look at her tears. He did not care about her status as a church elder. He simply dropped a thick manila envelope onto her lap. Bernice Williams, you are served, he said, his voice flat and professional. Simultaneously, the other 4 agents fanned out. One stopped in front of Dante, slapping a similar packet onto his chest. Another handed one to Tiffany, who recoiled as if the paper were coated in poison. The last 2 cornered the greasy lawyers Johnson and Miller, who were already frantically trying to shove their documents back into their briefcases. What is this? Dante shouted, ripping open the envelope. His hands were shaking so hard the paper rattled. I leaned back against the doorframe, crossing my arms. It is a lawsuit, Dante, or rather 5 of them. I am suing you for conspiracy to commit asset fraud. I am suing Mother for breach of fiduciary duty as the executor of Dad's estate. And Tiffany, I am suing you for unjust enrichment and conspiracy. I turned my gaze to the 2 lawyers who were currently looking for a way to melt into the carpet. And you 2 gentlemen are being sued for legal malpractice and aiding and abetting a fraudulent transfer. By the way, I have already forwarded copies of those complaints to the Illinois Bar Association. I imagine your licenses will be suspended by the time you finish your coffee. You cannot do this, Tiffany shrieked, her voice rising an octave. We are family. We stopped being family the moment you tried to steal an $8.5 million asset to turn it into a juice bar, I replied coldly. Dante's face turned a shade of purple I had only seen in cartoons. The reality of his situation was crashing down on him. The debt, the lies, the developers he had already taken money from. He realized there was no way out. The walls were closing in, and his instinct, as always, was violence. You witch! He roared. He lunged across the table, scattering papers and knocking over a pitcher of water. He was fast fueled by the adrenaline of a cornered animal. My mother screamed my name, but she did not move to stop him. She never did. She watched just as she had watched him steal from my piggy bank when we were kids, just as she had watched him bully me in high school. I did not flinch. I did not move. I did not have to. Before Dante could get within 3 feet of me, a massive hand clamped onto his shoulder. My head of security, a former linebacker named Marcus, who had been standing silently in the hallway, stepped into the room. With a single fluid motion, he spun Dante around and slammed him face first into the wall. The sound of my brother's cheekbone hitting the plaster was sickeningly loud. "Do not move," Marcus growled, pinning Dante's arm behind his back with effortless strength. "Or I will break it. Let him go!" Bernice wailed, finally finding her voice. She scrambled out of her chair, rushing toward her precious son. "You are hurting him. Serena, tell your thug to let him go." "He is not a thug, Mother," I said, my voice steady. "He is a professional, unlike the son you raised." I walked over to where Dante was pinned, his face pressed against the floral wallpaper, breathing heavy, angry breaths. I leaned in close so only he could hear me. "If you ever try to touch me again, Dante, I will not call security. I will finish it myself. Do you understand?" He grunted, defeat washing over him as Marcus hauled him upright and shoved him back into his chair. The room was in shambles. The illusion of the polite family brunch was gone, replaced by the ugly, jagged reality of who we really were. I looked at my mother, who was checking Dante's face for bruises, cooing at him, as if he were a toddler who had scraped his knee, not a grown man who had just tried to assault his sister. Seeing her like that, so blindly devoted to the source of all our misery, triggered a memory so sharp it felt like a physical blow. It took me back 6 months, to a sterile hospital room at Northwestern Memorial. The air smelled of antiseptic and dying flowers. My father, James Davis, was lying in the bed, his strong body wasted away by the cancer that had eaten him from the inside out. He was hooked up to monitors that beeped in a slow, rhythmic countdown to the end. I was sitting by his side reading through merger contracts because I did not know how to handle the grief. He had woken up, his eyes cloudy but focused. "Serena," he had rasped. I dropped the papers and took his hand. It felt like paper, dry and fragile. "I am here, Daddy." He reached under his pillow with a trembling hand and pulled out a small, heavy object. It was a key. An old-fashioned iron key that looked like it belonged to a different century. "Take it," he whispered. "What is this safety deposit box?" he wheezed, fighting for every breath. "Number 404, at the Bronzeville Bank, not the one your mother uses." I closed my fingers around the cold metal. "Why are you giving this to me?" "Because you are the only one who can do what needs to be done," he said, his eyes locking onto mine, with an intensity that scared me. "Your mother. She is a good woman in her heart, Serena. She loves the church. She loves the Lord." He paused, coughing violently. I reached for the water, but he stopped me. "But she loves God's money more than she loves God." He finished the words, hanging heavy in the air. "And she loves that boy Dante more than she loves justice. If I leave the club to her, she will sell it to save him. She will sell my soul, Serena. Do not let her sell my soul." I had cried then, resting my head on his chest. "I promise, Daddy. I won't let them touch it." "You have to be strong," he told me, stroking my hair. "They will hate you for it. They will call you everything but a child of God. But you have to be the villain to be the savior. Can you do that?" "I can," I had promised. The beep of the monitor brought me back to the present, to the luxurious private room at the Palmer house. My father was gone, but his warning was standing right in front of me, checking Dante for scratches while glaring at me with eyes full of hate. I straightened my blazer. The memory hardened my resolve. I was not just fighting for a building, I was fighting for my father's soul. "Get out," I said to the lawyers, "before I decide to add obstruction of justice to your lawsuits." Johnson and Miller did not need to be told twice. They grabbed their briefcases and scrambled out the door, abandoning their clients without a backward glance. Rats always know when the ship is sinking. Tiffany was crying now, silent tears that ruined her mascara. She looked at Dante, then at me, realizing for the first time that her husband was not the golden ticket she thought he was. He was an anchor, and he was dragging her down. I turned to leave. There was nothing more to say. I had delivered the message. Serena. My mother's voice stopped me at the threshold. It was a scream, raw and piercing. I turned around. She was standing tall, her chest heaving, the mask of the pious church lady completely gone. In its place was a woman scorned. "You think you have won?" she hissed, pointing a shaking finger at me. "You think because you have your fancy degrees and your white-collar lawyers that you can humiliate us. You are nothing. You are a cold, heartless witch." I did not respond. I just looked at her. "You dare sue your own mother?" She screamed, her voice echoing into the hallway where guests were starting to stare. "You want a war? I will give you a war. I will tell everyone. I will go to the pastor. I will go to the newspapers. I will tell all of Chicago that you abused your dying father to get him to sign that will. I will tell them you are an ungrateful, greedy child who threw her own brother to the wolves. I will destroy your reputation, Serena. You will not be able to walk into a courtroom in this city without people spitting on you." Her threats washed over me. She was terrified. She was lashing out because she knew she had lost control. I looked at her one last time. I looked at the woman who had birthed me, who had chosen my brother over me every single day of my life, who had just threatened to destroy the career I had built from nothing. "Do your worst, Mother," I said softly. "But remember, the truth has a funny way of coming out. And I have receipts." I turned and walked out of the room, Marcus falling in step behind me. Behind us, I could hear her still screaming, her voice cracking with rage. "Ungrateful. You are dead to me. Do you hear me? Dead." I walked through the lobby, heads turning as I passed. I kept my chin high. Let them stare. Let them whisper. They did not know the weight of the key in my pocket. They did not know the promise I had made to a dying man. My mother thought this was the end. She thought her threats would scare me into submission. She had no idea. I stepped out into the cool Chicago air, pulled out my phone and dialed the number of the private investigator I had on retainer. "It is done," I said as I climbed into the back of my car. "Now I want you to execute phase 2. Find out where Tiffany is hiding the money." The war had just begun. My phone vibrated against the mahogany surface of my desk. It was a notification. "Bernice Williams is live." I stared at the screen. My mother had never gone live on Facebook in her life. She barely knew how to tag a photo. But there she was, pixelated and teary-eyed, sitting on her floral sofa with a Bible clutched to her chest. Next to her sat Tiffany, dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue, looking like the picture of fragile innocence. I should have ignored it. I should have turned the phone over and gone back to the merger documents in front of me. But I watched. I watched as my mother looked into the camera lens and told 500,000 people that I was a monster. "Please pray for my daughter Serena," she sobbed, her voice breaking with practiced theatricality. "She has lost her way. The devil has hardened her heart. We tried to reason with her. We tried to show her love. But she has turned against her own flesh and blood." Tiffany leaned in, placing a comforting hand on my mother's shoulder. "It is not just that she added her voice soft and poisonous. It is what she did to Dad, to James. She waited until he was weak. She waited until the morphine made him confused. And then she forced him to sign that will. She stole the legacy he meant for his son. The lie hit me like a slap. I had been there. I had held his hand. He was lucid. He was fierce. He was protecting his life's work from exactly these people. But the truth did not matter to the internet. The truth was boring. A scandal involving a wealthy lawyer daughter defrauding her grieving mother and brother. That was entertainment. By the next morning, the video had 500,000 views. The comments scrolled by faster than I could read them. Ungrateful. Greedy. She needs Jesus. Shame on her. The court of public opinion had convened, and I had been found guilty in absentia. I did not respond. I did not post a defense. I did not comment. I knew that engaging with a lie only gave it oxygen. But silence has a price. The price was waiting for me in the parking garage of my building the next day. I walked toward my Range Rover, my heels echoing in the concrete cavern. I stopped 10 feet away. The driver's side door was no longer pristine white. Someone had taken a can of spray paint and scrawled a single word across the metal in jagged, dripping red letters. Greedy. The paint looked like blood running down the side of the car. I stood there staring at it. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. This was not just internet chatter anymore. This was real. The community I had grown up in, the people I had helped with free legal advice, the neighbors I had waved to on Sundays, they had turned on me. They had listened to my mother's sermon of lies and decided I was the enemy. I drove the car to a detailing shop, ignoring the stares of other drivers. I took a taxi to work. I could have cried. I could have called my mother and screamed at her for inciting this. But tears do not win lawsuits. And screaming does not protect assets. I took the elevator up to the 40th floor of the Sterling and Cooper building. My office was a glass fortress high above the noise and the dirt of the city. From here, Chicago looked like a grid of lights and logic. Down there, it was messy. Up here, it was just data. I sat down at my desk and unlocked my workstation. I am not just a lawyer. I have a background in forensic accounting. I know how to find things that people spend a lot of money trying to hide. My family thought this was a battle of narratives. They thought if they screamed loud enough I would crumble. They forgot that while they were playing checkers, I was playing three-dimensional chess. I opened my proprietary tracking software. It is a tool we use for corporate due diligence to make sure the companies we buy aren't laundering money for cartels. Today, I was using it on my sister-in-law, Tiffany, a woman who claimed to be a humble yoga instructor from the suburbs, a woman who had married my brother 2 years ago and immediately started whispering in his ear about investments and liquidating assets. She played the part of the supportive wife perfectly, but something about her had always felt curated, too polished, too eager to handle the finances while Dante handled the spending. I started with her social security number, credit history, standard stuff, maxed out credit cards, a few late payments on a student loan, nothing that screamed mastermind. But then I saw a recurring transfer, small amounts, $200 here, $300 there, going to a shell corporation registered in Delaware. I dug deeper. I followed the digital breadcrumbs. The Delaware LLC was a dead end, a dummy corporation with a P.O. box in Wilmington. Amateur hour. But whoever set it up had made a mistake. They had paid the annual filing fee with a personal credit card 3 years ago. I traced the card. It belonged to Tiffany. So my broke sister-in-law had a shell company. Why I pulled the bank records for the LLC. For 2 years it had been dormant, zero balance, and then 6 months ago, right around the time my father received his terminal diagnosis, the account woke up. A deposit of $10,000, then another, then $50,000. The money was not coming from Dante. Dante did not have $10,000. Dante did not have $10. I traced the source of the funds. They were wire transfers from an offshore account, the Cayman Islands. My pulse quickened. This was it. This was the loose thread. I initiated a deep trace on the originating bank routing number. It took 20 minutes. I sat there watching the progress bar, sipping cold coffee. When the name popped up on the screen, I did not gasp. I smiled, a cold, sharp smile that would have terrified my mother if she could have seen it. The money was coming from a holding company owned by Marcus Thorne. Marcus Thorne was not just a developer. He was the owner of the Velvet Room, the only other major nightlife venue in Bronzeville. He was my father's bitterest rival. For 20 years, Thorne had tried to buy the Legacy Jazz Club. He wanted to bulldoze it to expand his own empire, to build a parking lot for his club. My father had turned him down every single time. He hated Thorne. He called him a vulture who preyed on our culture. And now Marcus Thorne was funneling money into a secret account owned by my brother's wife. The pieces slammed into place. The sudden urgency to sell, the yoga studio idea, which was obviously just a cover story to clear the building, the lies about the developers. Tiffany was not just greedy. She was a mole. She had been bought and paid for by my father's enemy. She was taking payments to dismantle my father's legacy from the inside, using my brother's stupidity and my mother's blind faith as her weapons. I looked at the total amount transferred over the last 6 months. $150,000. That was the price of her loyalty. That was the price of my family's destruction. I hit print. The laser printer whirred to life, spitting out pages of bank statements, transfer logs, and corporate registry documents. The ink was still warm when I picked them up. I walked to the window and looked down at the city. Somewhere down there, Tiffany was probably still crying on Facebook, talking about family values and forgiveness. She thought she was winning. She thought the spray paint on my car was a victory. She did not know that I now held the nuclear codes. I picked up my phone. I did not call my mother. I dialed the number of the best private investigator in the city, a man named Vance who used to be FBI. Vance, I said, I have a lead on the sister-in-law. I need you to get me photos. I need you to find out where she meets Marcus Thorne. I need you to catch them shaking hands. Consider it done, Ms. Davis. I hung up. I looked at the red graffiti on the photo of my car that I had taken earlier. Greedy. They called me greedy because I wanted to save a building. Wait until they found out their precious Tiffany was selling them out for pennies on the dollar. I sat back in my leather chair. The silence of the office felt different now. It was not the silence of isolation. It was the silence of a hunter waiting in the blind. Let them have their Facebook likes. Let them have their self-righteous anger. I had the truth. And when I dropped it, it was going to leave a crater where their lives used to be. Vance walked into my office 3 days later, and he did not say a word. He just slid a heavy manila envelope across the glass surface of my desk. The air conditioning in my office hummed a low, steady note, the only sound in the room as I reached for the packet. I had paid Vance a small fortune because he was discreet and because he found things that other people missed. I opened the clasp and dumped the contents onto the table. Photographs spilled out like a deck of poisoned cards. I picked them up one by one. The first few were standard surveillance shots of Dante. He was leaving a high-end boutique on the Magnificent Mile, holding a shopping bag that I knew contained a handbag worth at least $5,000. But Dante was not alone. Hanging on his arm was a woman who was definitely not his wife Tiffany. She was young, stunning, with skin the color of deep mahogany and hair that cascaded down her back in expensive waves. "Who is she?" I asked, holding up the photo. "Her name is Kiki Vance," replied, leaning against the window frame. "She is an aspiring influencer. Dante has been paying the rent on her apartment in the Gold Coast for the last 8 months. I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. My brother, who claimed he was destitute, who begged our mother to force me to sign over a multi-million-dollar asset to save him from prison, was funding a luxury lifestyle for a mistress, while his wife plotted to sell our heritage. It was almost impressive how committed he was to self-destruction. But where is he getting the money, I asked. If he is $450,000 in the hole, he should not have cash for Chanel bags. Vance pointed to a smaller stack of papers I had missed. "Check the pawn slips." I picked up the receipts. They were from a high-end pawnbroker on State Street. The items listed made my blood turn to ice. A diamond tennis bracelet, a vintage pearl necklace, a sapphire brooch. I knew these items. I knew them because I had watched my father fasten that necklace around my mother's neck for their 30th anniversary. I had seen her wear that brooch to church every Easter Sunday for 20 years. These were not just trinkets. These were the physical manifestations of my father's love for her, and Dante had stolen them. He had crept into our mother's room, taken the only things of value she had left, and pawned them to buy affection from a stranger. "Bernice thinks they are safe in her jewelry box," Vance said. "He replaced them with high-quality fakes. She has no idea." I felt a surge of rage so pure it almost blinded me. My mother was participating in my destruction to save a son who was actively robbing her blind. She was demonizing me to the world while protecting a parasite. Is that all? I asked, my voice tight. No, Vance said. We found out who holds the debt. It is not a bank. It is not a credit card company. It is a man named Silas King. He runs a private game out of the back of a barber shop on 47th Street. He is old school. He does not sue people who do not pay. He breaks things. I nodded. I knew the name. Silas King was a legend in Bronzeville, a man who operated in the gray areas where the law did not reach. If Dante owed him nearly $500,000, the threats of prison were a lie. The reality was much worse. Dante was not scared of jail. He was scared of a hospital bed or a morgue. Set up a meeting, I said. Vance raised an eyebrow. With Silas King. You want to meet a loan shark? I stood up and smoothed my skirt. I am a corporate lawyer, Vance. I deal with loan sharks every day. Mine just wear better suits. That evening, I drove my Range Rover into the heart of Bronzeville. I parked 2 blocks away from the barber shop and walked. The neighborhood was alive, the sound of music and laughter spilling out of bars, the smell of barbecue smoke in the air. This was the community my father loved. This was the community Tiffany wanted to civilize with kale and yoga. I walked into the barber shop. It was late, but the chairs were full. Conversation stopped as I entered. I did not belong here in my tailored blazer and pearls, and every man in the room knew it. I am here to see Silas, I said to the man sweeping hair near the door. He looked me up and down, then jerked his head toward a door in the back. The room beyond was thick with cigar smoke. A poker game was in progress at a round table, but my eyes went to the man sitting in a leather armchair in the corner. Silas King was older than I expected, with gray hair and eyes that looked like they had seen everything and forgiven nothing. You must be the sister, he said, his voice a low rumble. Dante talks about you. Says you are the reason he cannot pay me. Says you are holding up his inheritance. I sat down in the empty chair opposite him. I did not ask for permission. Dante says a lot of things, I replied. Most of them are lies. I am not here to make excuses for him. Then why are you here? Silas asked, taking a slow drag from his cigar. If you are here to beg for more time, save your breath. Your brother promised me he would sell that club by the end of the month. If I do not see my money by then, I am going to collect in other ways. I reached into my bag. I did not pull out a weapon. I pulled out a cashier's check. I placed it on the table between us. $450,000, I said. Plus $50,000 for your trouble. That covers the principal and the interest. The room went silent. The men at the poker table stopped playing. Silas looked at the check, then up at me. He did not reach for it yet. You are a good sister, he said, a hint of mockery in his tone. Cleaning up his mess. You want to clear his ledger. I leaned forward. The smoke stung my eyes, but I did not blink. No, Mr. King. You misunderstand. I am not paying his debt. I am buying it. Silas froze. He looked at me with a new expression. Curiosity. I want you to assign the debt to me, I continued. I want the promissory note. I want the lien you hold on his car. I want every piece of paper that says he belongs to you. I want you to sign it all over to me. Silas laughed. A dry, raspy sound. You want to be his shark? I want to be his creditor, I corrected. And unlike you, I have the legal means to strip him of everything he owns without ever laying a hand on him. Silas picked up the check. He held it up to the light. Then he opened a drawer in the table next to him and pulled out a thick file folder. He tossed it onto the table. He is all yours, Silas said. But I will give you a piece of advice, lawyer lady. That boy is a bottomless pit. You throw money at him, it disappears. I know, I said, picking up the file. I checked the contents. The IOUs were there. The signed agreements, the leverage. I am not throwing money at him, I said, standing up. I am investing in his consequences. I walked out of the back room clutching the file to my chest. I felt lighter. I had just spent $500,000 of my own savings money I had earned billing 18-hour days for years. But I had bought something more valuable than a house or a car. I owned Dante now. He thought the pressure was off because he had convinced our mother to harass me. He thought he could wait me out. He did not know that the clock had just sped up. I got back into my car and locked the doors. I looked at the file on the passenger seat. I opened it to the last page. There was a list of collateral Dante had put up to secure the loan. His car, his future earnings, and incredibly, a signed affidavit claiming he had the authority to leverage our mother's house. He had bet our mother's roof against a poker hand. I took a picture of the document with my phone. I did not send it to my mother. Not yet. She was still on her Facebook crusade painting me as the villain. She was not ready for the truth. She needed to be broken first. I started the engine. The radio came on a jazz station playing a Coltrane track. It sounded like my father. "I am coming for them, Daddy," I whispered into the dark car. I drove out of Bronzeville and back toward the skyline of downtown. The city lights reflected in the river, cold and beautiful. I had the debt. I had the proof of the mistress. I had the evidence of the stolen jewelry. I had the ammunition. Now I just needed to pick the right moment to pull the trigger. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Dante. "You better fix this, Serena. Mom is crying again. You are destroying this family." I looked at the message and felt absolutely nothing. I deleted it. He had no idea that he was texting his new owner. The doorman called up to my penthouse at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday evening, saying my mother was in the lobby. I told him to send her up. I knew this moment was coming. After the stick failed at the hotel, she was coming with the carrot. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the Chicago skyline, steeling myself against the one weapon that had worked on me for 32 years, which was her approval. When the elevator doors slid open directly into my foyer, Bernice Williams stepped out looking nothing like the woman who had screamed at me 2 days ago. She was wearing her Sunday best, a modest navy dress with a lace collar, and she was clutching two things that were supposed to disarm me. In her left hand was her worn leather Bible, the one with the spine taped together. In her right hand was a Tupperware container. Even through the plastic, I could smell the nutmeg and cinnamon. Sweet potato pie, my favorite since I was 5 years old. She walked in slowly, looking around my apartment with wide, sad eyes. She ran a hand over the back of my Italian leather sofa, not with admiration, but with a kind of mournful judgment, as if the luxury itself was a sin. "Serena," she said softly, her voice trembling just enough to be heartbreaking. "I brought you something. I know how much you love my pie. I made it fresh this afternoon. I was thinking about you. I was praying for you. I did not offer her a drink. I did not invite her to sit. I just watched her set the pie on my glass coffee table next to the coaster." "Thank you, Mother," I said. "But I doubt you came all the way downtown just to feed me dessert." She sighed, a long, heavy sound that seemed to carry the weight of the world. "I came because I am worried about your soul, Serena. I am worried about this anger you are carrying. It is poisoning you. I know your brother made mistakes. I know Tiffany is not perfect. But we are blood, and the Bible says we must forgive 70 times 7 times. I crossed my arms. "The Bible also says thou shalt not steal, Mother. Dante tried to steal $8 million from me. Forgiveness does not mean letting him rob me blind." Bernice shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "It is not robbery when it is for survival. You do not understand the pressure he is under. But that is not why I am here. I am here because there is something you do not know. Something that changes everything." She took a step closer, reaching out to touch my arm. I flinched and she pulled back, looking wounded. "Tiffany is pregnant," she whispered. I stared at her. The silence in the room stretched thin. "She just found out." My mother continued, her face lighting up with a desperate, hopeful glow. She is carrying your nephew, my grandson, the first boy of the next generation, the heir Serena. Think about that. A baby, an innocent life. She grabbed my hand before I could pull away. Her grip was tight, frantic. If you go through with these lawsuits, if you take the club, if you let those men break Dante's legs over this debt, you are putting that baby on the street. You are sentencing your own nephew to homelessness before he even takes his first breath. Can you live with that? Can you be that cold? I looked at my mother. I looked at the woman who had raised me, the woman who claimed to be a pillar of truth in our community. I saw the desperation in her eyes. She believed it, or she wanted to believe it so badly that she had blinded herself to reality. She was using an unborn child as a human shield for her degenerate son. It was a good play. If I were anyone else, if I were the sister she thought I was, I might have crumbled. A baby changes things. A baby implies a future. But I am a lawyer, and I am a forensic accountant. And I deal in facts, not fantasies. I gently pulled my hand from hers. I walked over to my desk and picked up a manila folder. It was thin, just 2 sheets of paper and a photograph. Mother, I said, walking back to her. I need you to look at this. I do not want to see your legal papers, she spat, backing away. I am talking about family. Look at it, I commanded, my voice sharp. She looked. The top item was a photograph Vance had taken 3 days ago. It showed Dante sitting at an outdoor cafe table in the Gold Coast. He was laughing, his head thrown back. Sitting on his lap with her arms wrapped around his neck was Kiki. She was wearing a crop top and was very clearly not pregnant. That is Kiki, I said. That is the woman Dante has been spending your money on. He bought her a Chanel bag last week with the money from your pearl necklace. He is not celebrating a baby mother. He is celebrating his freedom while you beg for him. My mother stared at the photo. Her lip trembled. Men make mistakes, she whispered. He is weak. But that does not change the baby. Tiffany is still carrying his child. I flipped the page. Underneath the photo was a medical record. It was a billing statement from a private clinic in Highland Park. It was dated 3 years ago. The patient's name was Tiffany Davis. The procedure listed was a bilateral salpingectomy. I watched my mother read the words. I watched her struggle to understand the medical terminology. Do you know what that procedure is, Mother? I asked softly. She shook her head, her eyes wide and terrified. It means she had her tubes removed, I said. Permanently. Tiffany cannot get pregnant. She has been sterile for 3 years. She lied to you. She lied to Dante. Or maybe they both lied to you because they knew it was the only way to make you fight for them. There is no baby. There is no heir. There is just a lie, designed to manipulate you into protecting them. My mother made a sound like a wounded animal. She grabbed the paper from my hand and brought it close to her face, scanning it over and over, looking for a way for it to be fake, looking for a loophole. No, she moaned. She showed me the test. She showed me the stick. You can buy positive pregnancy tests online for $20. Mother, it is a scam. Just like the yoga studio, just like the developers. They are playing you. Bernice dropped the paper. It fluttered to the floor, landing next to her Bible. She stood there, trembling, her chest heaving. I thought for a moment she was going to collapse. I thought she was finally going to see the truth that her golden child was a monster and her daughter-in-law was a con artist. I reached out to her. Mom, I said, I am trying to save you. They are going to drain you dry. She looked up at me. Her eyes were not filled with realization. They were filled with hate. Pure, unadulterated hate. Liar, she screamed. Her hand moved faster than I could react. The slap cracked across my face like a whip. My head snapped to the side. The sting on my cheek was sharp and hot, radiating through my jaw. I stumbled back, catching myself on the sofa. I touched my cheek. I looked at her. You are a liar, she shrieked, advancing on me. You forged this. You made this up because you are jealous. You are jealous because Dante has someone to love him, and you are alone in this big, cold apartment. You are the devil, Serena. You are a divider. You want to destroy this family because you are miserable. She was hysterical. She was rejecting the evidence of her own eyes because the truth was too painful to bear. If she admitted I was right, she had to admit that she had sacrificed her daughter for a lie. She had to admit that her life's work, her son, was a failure. She could not do it. Her mind broke before her faith in him did. "Get out," I whispered. My face was throbbing. "I will pray for you," she yelled, grabbing her Bible from the table but leaving the pie. "I will pray that God strikes you down for your lies. You are no daughter of mine. You are a snake." She turned and marched to the elevator, jamming the button with her finger. She did not look back. The doors opened, she stepped in, and she was gone. I stood alone in my foyer. The smell of sweet potato pie was still in the air, sickeningly sweet now. I looked at the medical record on the floor. I looked at the picture of Dante laughing. I walked over to the coffee table. I picked up the Tupperware container. It was still warm. I walked to the kitchen and dropped it into the trash can. The heavy thud echoed in the silence. She had made her choice. She had chosen the lie. She had chosen to hit me rather than face the truth. I went to the freezer and got an ice pack. I held it to my cheek as I walked back to my desk. The tears did not come. The part of me that wanted my mother's love had died the moment her hand connected with my face. I sat down at my computer. My face hurt, but my mind was clear, cold and clear. I picked up my phone and dialed Vance. "Phase 3, I said. "What is Phase 3, he asked. "Phase 3 is the house," I said. "My mother just assaulted me, and she is harboring a fraud. I am done protecting her. Send the file on the mortgage fraud to the bank, and call the building inspector. I want that house condemned before she gets home." "You are sure?" Vance asked. "That is the nuclear option." I touched my cheek. It was already swelling. "I am sure," I said. "Push the button." I hung up the phone. I looked out at the city lights. They looked like stars, cold and distant. I was alone in my tower, but I was safe. And tomorrow my mother was going to learn that the truth hurts a lot more than a slap. I found Tiffany at the Elysian Spa on Walton Street, lying on a heated marble table with cucumber slices over her eyes and a clay mask hardening on her face. It was 2 in the afternoon on a workday, while my brother was supposedly scrambling to find money to pay off a loan shark, and my mother was at home praying for my damnation. My sister-in-law was spending $600 on a diamond dust facial. I stood over her for a moment, just watching. She looked so peaceful for a woman who was actively dismantling a family. She looked like she did not have a care in the world. I signaled the esthetician to leave the room. The young woman looked at my suit, looked at the determined set of my jaw, and wisely decided not to argue. She slipped out and closed the heavy door, leaving us alone in the lavender-scented silence. I reached down and plucked the cucumber slice off Tiffany's left eye. She gasped and sat up, clawing at her face, smearing the gray clay. When her eyes focused and she saw me standing there, she did not look scared. She looked annoyed. She looked like I was the help who had brought her the wrong tea. "Serena," she sighed, flopping back down onto the towel. "Can't a girl get a moment of peace? I am so stressed. Your family is exhausting." "My family," I repeated, pulling a stool over to the side of the table. "You are part of this family, remember? That is what you screamed at me in the hotel. Or does family only matter when you need a signature on a deed transfer?" Tiffany wiped the mask from her lips with the back of her hand. She sat up properly this time, pulling her silk robe tight around her. "Look, I know you are angry about the brunch. It was intense. Dante gets carried away. But you have to understand, we are desperate. We are trying to build a future." I crossed my legs. I looked at her with the same clinical detachment I used when examining a hostile witness. "I am not here to talk about Dante, Tiffany. I am here to talk about you. I am here to talk about Marcus Thorne." Her eyes flickered. It was a tiny movement, a micro-expression of panic that vanished as quickly as it appeared, but I saw it. I saw it because I was looking for it. I do not know who that is, she said, her voice steady. Do not insult my intelligence, I said. You have received $150,000 from his holding company in the Cayman Islands over the last 6 months. I have the bank records. I have the wire transfers. I know you are on his payroll. Tiffany stared at me. Then slowly, a smile spread across her face. It was not the sweet, ingratiating smile she used in front of my mother. It was a smirk. It was the face of a woman who was tired of pretending. So what if I am? She asked, reaching for a glass of cucumber water. Marcus is a visionary. He understands potential. Your father sat on that property for 40 years and did nothing. It is a gold mine, Serena. And it is being wasted on jazz. Wasted, I said, keeping my voice low. It is a cultural landmark. It is history. History does not pay the bills. Tiffany snapped. And frankly, that history is ugly. I hate going down there. It is loud. It smells like old smoke and cheap bourbon, and the people, Serena. Let's be honest. It attracts the wrong element. I felt a cold rage settle in my chest. The wrong element. She meant black people. She meant the people who lived in Bronzeville, the people who had built that community long before she decided it was the next trendy zip code. So your plan is to fix it, I said, leaning forward. My plan is to elevate it, she corrected, her eyes shining with a fanatical kind of arrogance. Imagine a space that is clean, white walls, natural light, a high-end yoga studio on the top floor, a farm-to-table cafe on the bottom. We will bring in a new demographic. Young professionals, people with money. We will raise the property values. We are doing the neighborhood a favor. We are cleaning it up. You want to erase us, I said. You want to take a black space and turn it white. I want to make it profitable, she countered. And if that means getting rid of the old men playing saxophones and replacing them with spin classes, then yes, that is progress. Your mother is too old to see it. Dante is too stupid to execute it. That is why Marcus approached me. He knew I was the only one with the vision to make it happen. I reached into the pocket of my blazer. My hand closed around my phone. It had been recording since I walked into the room. You are never going to touch a single brick of that building, Tiffany, I said. I will tie you up in court until you are gray. I will expose your payments from Thorne. I will show my mother exactly who you are. Tiffany laughed. It was a harsh, ugly sound that echoed off the tiled walls. You think your mother cares about where the money comes from? She cares about Dante. She cares about her image. As long as I promise to save her precious son from prison, she will sign whatever I put in front of her. She is weak, Serena. She is a relic just like that club. She leaned in close, her clay-covered face inches from mine. And as for stopping us, you are too late. What does that mean? I asked. It means Dante handled it this morning, she whispered, a triumphant gleam in her eyes. While you were busy playing detective, Dante went to the bank. He had a power of attorney document, signed by you. I froze. I never signed a power of attorney. I know, Tiffany smiled. But Dante has been practicing your signature since high school. He signed it. The notary was a friend of ours. It is done, Serena. He withdrew $50,000 from the maintenance fund an hour ago to pay the initial contractors. The demolition crews are scheduled for Monday. You can sue us all you want. By the time the courts hear your case, the legacy will be a pile of rubble. My heart hammered against my ribs. They had crossed the line from conspiracy to active theft. They had forged my signature to loot the corporate accounts. This was not just a civil matter anymore. This was a felony. You are admitting to fraud, I said. You are admitting to forgery. Who is going to believe you? She sneered. It is your word against the family. Your mother will back us up. She will say you gave verbal permission. She will say you are lying because you are jealous that Dante is taking charge. You are alone, Serena. You have always been alone. We are a united front. I stood up. I looked down at her. She thought she had won. She thought she was the smartest person in the room because she was willing to break the law. She did not understand that she had just handed me the weapon I needed to end her. Enjoy your facial, Tiffany, I said. I hope it was worth it. I turned and walked out of the room. I did not run. I walked with purpose. I walked out of the spa past the reception desk and out onto the street. The sun was shining, but the air felt cold. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I stopped the recording. I saved the file. Then I emailed it to 3 people: my lawyer, the district attorney, and my private investigator. Then I dialed the number for the First National Bank of Chicago. "This is Serena Williams Davis," I said when the fraud department answered. "I am reporting unauthorized activity on the Legacy Jazz Club corporate account. I need to speak to the manager immediately. And you better call the police because my brother just walked out of your branch with $50,000 of stolen money." Tiffany wanted a clean neighborhood. She wanted to remove the wrong element. I was about to give her exactly what she wanted. I was going to clean house. And I was starting with her. The call with the bank manager was short, brutal, and effective. I sat in my car outside the spa, the engine idling, as I listened to Mr. Henderson stammer on the other end of the line. He confirmed that a cashier's check for $50,000 had been issued to Dante Williams less than 45 minutes ago. My brother had walked into the branch with a notarized power of attorney document that bore a signature that looked remarkably like mine, claiming he needed the funds for emergency structural repairs. It was a lie so bold it was almost impressive if it were not also a felony. I told Henderson to freeze every account associated with the legacy immediately. I told him that if one more cent moved from those accounts, I would sue his branch for negligence so severe he would be lucky to find a job working a drive-through window. Then I hung up and dialed the number for the Cook County Circuit Court. I am a merger and acquisition attorney. I do not usually handle family law or petty theft, but I know how the system works. I know that money moves faster than justice, and if I waited for a standard hearing, Dante and Tiffany would be in Paris drinking champagne while I was left explaining to a judge why my father's life work was bankrupt. I needed a nuclear option. I needed an emergency injunction. I called in a favor from a judge I had clerked for 10 years ago, a man who hated fraud almost as much as I did. I explained the situation, emailed him the affidavit I had drafted on my phone while driving, and attached the audio file of Tiffany admitting to the forgery. By the time I pulled up to the precinct, the electronic signature was dry on a temporary restraining order that froze Dante, Tiffany, and my mother out of every asset my father had ever owned. But a piece of paper was not enough. I walked into the police station with the stride of a woman who owns the building. I sat down with a detective I knew from a white-collar crime case I had consulted on last year. I laid it all out: the forged signature, the wire fraud, the unauthorized withdrawal. This was not a civil dispute anymore. This was grand larceny. When I played the recording of Tiffany laughing about the forgery, the detective's face went hard. He issued a warrant for Dante Williams for bank fraud and identity theft. I did not go home. I got back in my car and followed the squad car to the house in Bronzeville, the house where I grew up, the house my father had paid for, which my mother had allowed Dante to mortgage into oblivion. I parked down the street, keeping my tinted windows rolled up. I needed to see this. I needed to witness the moment the consequences finally caught up to the golden child. The police officers walked up the path to the front porch. It was a quiet afternoon, the kind of day where neighbors were out watering their lawns and kids were riding bikes. The arrival of a squad car was an event. Curtains twitched. People stopped on the sidewalk. This was exactly what my mother feared most: the public eye, the judgment of the community. One of the officers knocked on the door. I saw it open. My mother stood there wearing her housecoat, looking frail and confused. But I knew better. I knew that under that housecoat was a spine of steel when it came to protecting her son. I could not hear the words from my car, but I saw the body language. The officer held up a piece of paper. My mother shook her head. She tried to close the door. The officer put his hand out to stop it. Then Dante appeared behind her. He looked terrified. He was still wearing the same clothes he had worn to the bank, the suit he thought made him look like a businessman, but only made him look like a con artist. He saw the police and tried to back away into the shadows of the hallway, but it was too late. The officers stepped inside. That was when the performance began. Through the open door, I heard a scream that sounded like a siren. It was my mother. She did not just yell. She threw herself onto the floor of the entryway. I watched through the windshield as Bernice Williams, the deaconess, the pillar of the community, sprawled across the threshold, clutching the officer's ankle. She was wailing a high-pitched, keen sound that drew neighbors out of their houses from 3 doors down. She was screaming that they were killing her. She was screaming that her heart was stopping. She was screaming that I, her own daughter, had sent hitmen to murder her baby boy. It was a master class in manipulation. She knew exactly what she was doing. In the current climate, 2 white police officers dragging a black man out of his mother's house, while an elderly woman screamed about police brutality, was a public relations nightmare waiting to happen. She was weaponizing her age, her race, and her community to shield a criminal. The officers hesitated. I saw them look at each other. They were professionals, but they were also human. They did not want a riot. They did not want a viral video that lacked context. Neighbors were already pulling out their phones recording the scene. Dante saw his opening. He did not run. He collapsed next to our mother, holding her, looking up at the officers with wide, innocent eyes, playing the role of the terrified victim. He shouted that he was being framed, that his sister was a high-powered lawyer who was abusing her connections to steal their home. It was chaos. It was humiliating. And it was working. The officers stepped back onto the porch. They were talking into their radios. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. "Arrest him," I whispered to the empty car. "Do your job." But they did not. The risk was too high. Without a visual on a weapon or an immediate threat to life, they were not going to physically fight an elderly woman who was claiming to be in cardiac arrest. They handed my mother a citation, said something to Dante that made him smirk, and walked back to their car. They were leaving. My phone rang. It was the detective. "Ms. Davis, we have a situation," he said, his voice frustrated. "The officers on the scene say the mother is claiming medical distress and obstructing the arrest. A crowd is gathering. We are going to have to de-escalate and come back with a warrant for the mother too, or this is going to turn into a news story we do not want. We are pulling back for now. We will pick him up when he leaves the house." I hung up. I watched the squad car drive away. I watched Dante help my mother up from the floor. As soon as the police were out of sight, her medical distress miraculously vanished. She dusted off her knees, glared at the neighbors until they put their phones away and slammed the front door. They had won the battle. They had used the very system I served to protect themselves. They had turned my adherence to the law against me. I sat there for a long time. The sun began to set, casting long shadows over the street, where I had learned to ride a bike, where I had learned that I would always be second best. My mother was willing to debase herself, to lie to the police, to fake a heart attack, all to save a son who had stolen $50,000 from her husband's legacy. She had accused me of abuse. She had screamed to the neighborhood that I was trying to kill her. There was no coming back from that. There was no reconciliation after a mother accuses her child of attempted murder to protect a thief. I started the engine. I did not drive to my apartment. I drove to the one place where I knew I could find clarity. I drove to the legacy. I parked in the alley and let myself in the back door. The club was dark, smelling of lemon polish and old velvet. I walked to the bar and poured myself a glass of water. I sat on a stool and looked at the empty stage where my father used to sit and listen to the music. His eyes closed, a smile on his face. They thought they had escaped. They thought that because the police left, they were safe. They did not understand who they were dealing with. I was not just a lawyer. I was the person who cleaned up messes that other people were too afraid to touch. If the police could not touch Dante because he was hiding behind our mother's skirts, then I had to remove the skirts. I had to strip away the protection. I had to make it so expensive, so painful, and so humiliating for her to harbor him that she would throw him out herself. My mother wanted to play the victim. Fine. I would make her a victim of her own choices. I pulled out my laptop and opened the file I had started earlier. The mortgage fraud. The evidence that Dante and Tiffany had forged her signature to take out a second mortgage on the house. The bank did not know about that yet. Bernice did not know about that yet. She thought the house was paid off. She thought she was secure. I looked at the send button. Once I sent this file to the bank's fraud department, they would foreclose. They would take the house. My mother would be homeless. She would lose the one thing she valued more than her son, her status in the neighborhood. I hesitated. It was the house I grew up in. It was my father's house, too. But my father was gone, and the woman living there was not my mother anymore. She was an accomplice. I thought about Dante's smirk as the police drove away. I thought about Tiffany laughing in the spa. I hit send. The email whooshed away. The clock was ticking now. In 24 hours, the bank would serve a foreclosure notice. In 48 hours, the sheriff would come, and this time, no amount of screaming on the floor would stop them. I finished my water. I washed the glass and put it away. I walked out of the club and locked the door. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I counted softly into the night air. You should have taken the brunch. The Cook County Circuit Court smells like lemon polish and desperation on the best of days, but today it smelled like expensive perfume and lies. My family had arrived early. They took up the entire plaintiff side of the courtroom, looking like a oil painting of grief. My mother, Bernice, was wearing black from head to toe, a veil covering her face, as if she were attending a funeral instead of a preliminary hearing to steal assets. Dante was in a suit that actually fit him for once, probably bought with the money he stole from the bank account before I froze it. Tiffany sat next to him, holding his hand, looking pale and fragile. They were putting on a show for the judge. They wanted to look like the victims of a ruthless corporate lawyer daughter who had manipulated a dying man. I sat alone at the defense table. I did not bring a team. I did not need one. I had my laptop, a flash drive, and the truth. They had filed an emergency motion to contest the validity of my father's will, claiming he lacked testamentary capacity. In plain English, they were saying my father was too drugged up on morphine to know what he was doing when he signed the Legacy Jazz Club over to me. It was a standard move in probate court, but they had escalated it. They had brought a witness. Their new lawyer was a man named Sterling, who looked like he charged by the minute. He stood up and gave a speech about the sanctity of family and the tragedy of elder abuse. He painted a picture of my father, James Davis, as a man who was out of his mind with pain in his final days, a man who could not tell day from night, let alone understand the complexities of a property transfer. Then he called his star witness, Dr. Aris. I watched as the doctor took the stand. He was not my father's oncologist. He was not his palliative care physician. He was a hired gun, a specialist in geriatric psychiatry who had never met my father in real life, but had reviewed selected medical records provided by my mother. Dr. Aris adjusted his glasses and looked at the judge with practiced gravity. He testified that based on the dosage of pain medication my father was prescribed in his final week, it would have been medically impossible for him to possess the cognitive function necessary to execute a legal document. He used big words and pointed to charts. He said the word delirium 5 times. He said my father was likely hallucinating. He said any signature obtained during that period was the result of coercion or confusion. My mother sobbed quietly into a handkerchief right on cue. Dante shook his head, looking down at the table as if the memory was too painful to bear. It was a compelling performance. If I were the judge, I might have believed them. After all, who would question a grieving widow and a doctor with a Harvard degree? When it was my turn, I did not cross-examine the doctor. I did not ask about his fee, although I knew he was being paid $5,000 for his appearance money. That probably came from pawning the last of my mother's silver. I stood up and addressed the judge. Your Honor, I move to dismiss the testimony of Dr. Aris as irrelevant. The plaintiffs claim my father was incompetent on the day he signed the will. They claim he did not know who his family was. They claim he did not understand the value of his assets. I walked over to the AV cart in the center of the room. I plugged in my flash drive. I would like to submit Defense Exhibit A. This is a video recording taken by me on November 12th. That is one day before my father passed away, and the exact day the will was signed. Sterling jumped up, objecting that he had not seen this evidence. The judge overruled him, stating that in an emergency hearing for an injunction, all relevant evidence was admissible. The lights in the courtroom dimmed. The large screen on the wall flickered to life. The room went silent. And then, there he was. My father, James Davis, filled the screen. He was sitting up in his hospital bed. He looked thin. His skin was gray. The tubes in his nose were visible, but his eyes were open. And they were sharp. They were the eyes of the man who had built a business empire from nothing in the middle of a segregated city. He looked directly into the camera lens, which meant he was looking directly at Dante and Bernice. My name is James Davis. His voice rasped through the courtroom speakers. It was weak, but every word was enunciated with deliberate clarity. Today is November 12th. I am of sound mind, though my body is failing me. I am making this recording because I know my family. I know them better than they know themselves. On the screen, my father took a sip of water, his hand trembling slightly, before he set the cup down and continued. I am leaving the Legacy Jazz Club and the entirety of my estate to my daughter Serena. I am doing this not because I do not love my wife and son, but because I do love them. And I know that if I give them this money, they will destroy themselves. In the courtroom, I heard my mother gasp. It was a wet, ragged sound. Bernice, my father said from the grave, his eyes boring into hers. You are a good woman, but you are a blind mother. You have enabled Dante since he was a boy. You have bailed him out of every mistake he has ever made. If I leave this club to you, you will sell it to save him from his latest disaster. You will let him gamble away 50 years of our history. I cannot let you do that. I cannot let you sell our soul to fix his sins. Dante was gripping the table so hard his knuckles were white. He looked like he wanted to vomit. And Dante, my father, continued shifting his gaze as if he knew exactly where his son would be sitting. I know about the debts, I know about the gambling. I know you are not a businessman's son. You are an addict. You have a hole inside you that you try to fill with money and flash. If I give you this club, you will be dead in a year. The sharks will eat you alive. Leaving this to your sister is the only way to keep you alive. She is the only one strong enough to say no to you. The video. James leaned back against the pillows, exhausted by the effort. I am signing this will of my own free will. Serena did not ask for this. In fact, she begged me to leave something for you. But I refused, because I love you too much to fund your destruction. This is my final word. The screen went black. The lights in the courtroom came back on. The silence was absolute. The court reporter had stopped typing. The bailiff was staring at the floor. I looked at my family. My mother had stopped crying. She was staring at the blank screen, her face a mask of absolute shock. She had convinced herself that I had manipulated him. She had built a fortress of lies in her mind to protect herself from the truth. And her husband had just torn it down from beyond the grave. He had called her out in open court. He had exposed her blindness and her enabling for the world to see. Dante was shaking. He wasn't shaking from grief. He was shaking from terror. He had promised Silas King the money from the sale. He had guaranteed it. And now his father had just told a judge that he was a liability. I looked at the judge. He was a stern man who had seen everything, but even he looked moved. He cleared his throat and looked at Mr. Sterling. Counsel, do you have any evidence that refutes the direct video testimony of the decedent? Sterling looked at his clients. He looked at the doctor who was busy packing up his briefcase. He looked at me. He closed his folder. No, Your Honor. The judge banged his gavel. It sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. The motion to invalidate the will is denied. The will stands as written. The estate belongs to Serena Williams Davis. Furthermore, given the clarity of the decedent's intent and the frivolous nature of this motion, I am ordering the plaintiffs to pay all legal fees associated with this hearing. Court is adjourned. For a second, nobody moved. And then the dam broke. It was not my mother who screamed. It was Dante. He jumped up, kicking his chair back so hard it fell over. No, he howled, a sound of pure animal panic. You cannot do this. I need that money. You are killing me. He lunged toward me again, but this time he did not get far. The bailiffs were on him in a second, dragging him back. My mother stood up. She looked at me. Her eyes were wild. You made him say that, she hissed. You edited it. You used technology. That was not my husband. My James would never shame me like that. It was him, mother, I said, gathering my laptop. It was the man you married. You just never listened to him when he was alive, so he had to make sure you heard him when he was dead. She lunged at me, grabbing my arm. Her nails dug into my suit jacket. Fix this, Serena. You fix this right now. Give him the money. He is going to die if you do not give him the money. I pulled my arm away. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had slapped me. The woman who had dragged my name through the mud on Facebook. He is not going to die because of me, mother, I said. He is going to face the consequences of his own life. And so are you. I walked away. I walked down the center aisle of the courtroom, leaving the screaming and the chaos behind me. I pushed open the double doors and stepped out into the hallway. I felt light. I felt clean. My father's voice was still ringing in my ears. You have to be the villain to be the savior. I took out my phone. I had won the legal battle. Now it was time for the financial execution. I dialed the number for the towing company I had contracted the day before. Execute Phase 4, I said. What is the target? The dispatcher asked. A 2023 Mercedes G-Wagon, I said. License plate King D. It is parked in the reserved spot at the courthouse. Take it. I hung up. Dante was about to walk out of the courthouse a loser, and he was going to be walking home. Sunday morning in Bronzeville has a rhythm to it. It is a slow, majestic cadence of church bells, organ music, and the heavy scent of expensive perfume, mixing with the exhaust of luxury cars, double parked on Martin Luther King Drive. For my mother, Bernice Williams' Sunday service was not just about worship. It was a fashion show. It was a board meeting. It was the weekly reaffirmation of her status as the matriarch of the community. She would put on her widest-brimmed hat, the one with the silk flowers that cost more than a mortgage payment, and march into the Ebenezer Baptist Church with Dante on her arm, projecting the image of the perfect blessed family. They thought they were safe here. They thought the courtroom loss on Friday was a private embarrassment, something they could spin or hide. They did not understand that I was done with privacy. I was done with secrets. I sat in my Range Rover 100 yards down the street, parked in the shadow of an elm tree. The engine was idling, the air conditioning keeping the cabin a crisp 68 degrees. I took a sip of my black coffee and adjusted my oversized sunglasses. I was not here to pray. I was here to collect. At 11:30 in the morning, the service let out. The heavy oak doors swung open and the congregation spilled out onto the sidewalk. I saw them immediately. Dante was wearing a cream-colored three-piece suit, looking every inch the prosperous businessman he pretended to be. He was laughing, shaking hands with the deacon, probably making promises he could not keep. My mother was beside him, beaming, clutching her Bible like a shield. Tiffany was there too, looking bored and checking her phone, likely texting her lover about when she could finally leave this city. They walked toward the reserved parking spots right in front of the church steps. That was where Dante parked his pride and joy. The 2023 Mercedes G-Wagon, matte black, custom rims. The license plate read King D. It was a $200,000 car bought with money he did not have leveraged against a future he had stolen. But the G-Wagon was not alone. Parked directly behind it, blocking it in completely, was a massive flatbed tow truck. The driver was a man named Tiny, who ironically weighed about 300 pounds and had forearms the size of tree trunks. I had hired Tiny because he was efficient and because he did not care about church clothes. I watched through my windshield as Dante stopped. His smile dropped. He said something to the deacon and hurried toward his car. He waved his hand at Tiny, making a shooing motion as if the tow truck were a fly he could swat away. Tiny did not move. He stepped out of the cab holding a clipboard. He was wearing a grease-stained jumpsuit that stood out violently against the Sunday finery of the crowd. I cracked my window just an inch. I wanted to hear this. "Move this truck!" Dante shouted, his voice carrying over the chatter of the crowd. "You are blocking me in. Do you know who I am?" Tiny looked at his clipboard, then at the VIN number on the G-Wagon's dashboard. "I know who you are," Tiny rumbled. "You are the guy who missed 6 payments, and you are the guy whose debt was just sold. I am here for the vehicle." My mother bustled forward, her hat bobbing indignantly. "Young man, this is a house of God. You cannot tow a car during the Lord's Day. We are the Williams family. We are pillars of this church." Tiny looked at her with zero interest. "Lady, I do not care if you are the Pope. I have a repossession order. The lien holder wants the asset secured immediately." Lien holder. Dante scoffed, trying to play it cool as a crowd began to gather. People were stopping on the stairs. Phones were coming out. This was the Sunday entertainment. "I dealt with Silas King last week. He knows I am good for it. Tell Silas I will see him on Tuesday." Tiny shook his head. He pulled a lever on the side of his truck, and the hydraulic bed began to lower with a mechanical whine that cut through the Sunday peace. "Silas King does not hold the note anymore, Mr. Williams. He sold the debt 48 hours ago." Dante froze. He looked confused. "Who sold it? Who holds the note?" Tiny checked the paperwork again, making a show of it. He looked up, his eyes scanning the street until he seemingly looked right at my tinted windows, though I knew he could not see me. "The debt was purchased by a private entity," Tiny announced, his voice loud enough for the back row of the choir to hear. "The new lien holder is Serena Williams Davis. She ordered the immediate seizure of all collateral." The gasps from the crowd were audible even from 100 yards away. The name hung in the air like smoke. Serena. The sister. The daughter. The outcast. Dante's face went from confusion to a rage so pure it distorted his features into something monstrous. He lunged at Tiny, grabbing the man's jumpsuit. "You are lying!" he screamed. "She cannot do this. That is my car." Tiny swatted Dante's hands away effortlessly. He pushed my brother back, and Dante stumbled, nearly tripping over the curb. "Sir, step away from the vehicle, or I will call the police. And given that you have an outstanding warrant for bank fraud that just hit the system this morning, I do not think you want the police here." The warrant. That was the cherry on top. I had timed it perfectly. The fraud report I filed with the bank had been processed. Dante looked around. He saw the faces of the congregation. The deacon who had just shaken his hand was now backing away. The choir ladies were whispering behind their fans. The image he had cultivated, the image of the successful golden child, was evaporating in real time. He was just a deadbeat with a repossessed car. He snapped. "She is here, isn't she?" Dante roared, spinning around, scanning the street with wild eyes. He looked unhinged. "Where is she, Serena? I know you are watching." He ran into the middle of the street, his arms flailing. "I am going to kill you. Do you hear me? I will kill you for this. You think you can embarrass me. You think you can take what is mine." The threats echoed off the church walls. Witnesses were recording. He was threatening the life of an officer of the court in front of 200 people. It was beautiful. Then came the finale. My mother, realizing that her son was self-destructing and that her status was dissolving, decided to pull the emergency ripcord. She clutched her chest. She let out a wail that sounded more like a siren than a human sound. "My heart," she screamed. "Oh Lord, my heart." She collapsed. It was a graceful fall practiced. She managed to land on the grass strip near the sidewalk, ensuring her Sunday dress would not get dirty and her hat would not be crushed. Mama Dante yelled, rushing to her side. "Look what you did, Serena! You killed her!" The crowd surged forward, a mix of concern and curiosity, but I stayed in my car. I took another sip of coffee. It was lukewarm now, but it tasted like victory. I knew my mother's medical history better than she did. Her heart was fine. Her ego, however, was in critical condition. Tiny did not stop. He hooked the chains onto the axle of the G-Wagon. The winch whirred. The black SUV, the symbol of Dante's fake success, was dragged up onto the flatbed. It looked like a beached whale. Tiffany stood off to the side. She was not helping Dante. She was not checking on my mother. She was backing away inch by inch, trying to disassociate herself from the disaster. She was typing furiously on her phone, probably texting her lover, probably realizing that the money train had not just derailed, it had exploded. I watched as the ambulance arrived. I watched the paramedics assess my mother, their faces bored as they realized her vitals were stable. I watched Dante try to get into the ambulance with her, only to be stopped by a patrol car that had pulled up behind the tow truck. The officers approached Dante. I saw the recognition in his eyes. He knew. I put the car in drive. I did not need to see the handcuffs. I knew they were coming. The show was over. The debt had been called in. As I drove past the church slow and steady, I looked out the window. For a split second, Dante looked up. He saw my car. He saw my silhouette behind the glass. The look on his face was not anger anymore. It was fear. Pure, primal fear. I turned the corner and merged into traffic. The radio was playing a gospel song about reaping what you sow. I hummed along. I had taken his car. I had taken his dignity. And I had exposed them all for exactly what they were. But I was not done. The car was just the collateral. Now I was coming for the principal, and the house was next. The silence inside my mother's house that Sunday night was not the silence of peace, but the silence of a held breath before a scream. After the spectacle with the tow truck and the ambulance, Dante had retreated to the basement with a bottle of cognac he had managed to hide from me. My mother Bernice had taken to her bed, nursing her bruised ego, and a migraine that I suspected was the only real thing about her medical condition. The house should have been a place of mourning for their lost status, a bunker where they huddled together against the siege I had laid upon them. But Tiffany was not huddling. Tiffany was calculating. I sat in my penthouse office, the glow of my monitors illuminating the darkness. I was not sleeping. I was watching. 3 years ago, after Dante had borrowed my spare key and accidentally lost $1,000 of my electronics, I had hired a security team to install hidden cameras in the common areas and the master bedroom of my mother's house. I told myself it was to protect her from break-ins. In reality, it was to protect her from her own son. I had never told her they were there. She would have called it spying. I called it insurance. On my screen, the feed from the master bedroom flickered in high-definition night vision. It was 3 a.m. My mother was asleep, a lump under the heavy quilt, her breathing rhythmic and heavy. But the door was opening. It creaked slowly, just enough to admit a slender figure. It was not Dante. Dante was too clumsy, too drunk. It was Tiffany. She was dressed in black leggings and a hoodie, looking more like a cat burglar than a yoga instructor. She moved with a terrifying efficiency. She did not look at my mother. She did not hesitate. She walked straight to the walk-in closet where my mother kept the floor safe. It was a heavy, old-fashioned steel box that Bernice believed was impenetrable. She kept the deed to the house there, along with the jewelry that Dante had not yet managed to steal. Tiffany knelt before the safe. I watched, expecting her to struggle with the combination. Instead, she pulled a slip of paper from her pocket, punched in the numbers, and the handle turned. My mother, in her infinite wisdom, must have written the combination down, or perhaps Dante had given it to her in a moment of pillow talk weakness. The door swung open. Tiffany did not take papers. She did not care about deeds or insurance policies. She wanted liquidity. She reached in and pulled out the velvet pouches. I watched on my screen as she dumped the contents onto the carpet. The heavy gold crucifix my grandmother had left Bernice. The emerald ring my father had bought her when he closed his first big deal. The diamond stud earrings she saved for Christmas service. Tiffany scooped them up. She did not look at them with appreciation. She looked at them like they were currency. She shoved them into a duffel bag she had brought with her. Then she reached deeper into the safe and pulled out a stack of cash. The emergency fund. The church money. The cash Bernice kept for a rainy day. It disappeared into the bag. Tiffany stood up. She looked at the sleeping form of my mother one last time. There was no guilt in her face, there was only contempt. She zipped the bag turned on her heel and ghosted out of the room. She was liquidating the last of the family assets before the ship sank completely. She knew Dante was finished. She knew the house was next. She was cashing out. I recorded the clip. I saved it to 3 different hard drives. I could have called the police right then. I could have stopped her. But I didn't. I needed my mother to wake up to an empty safe. I needed her to feel the violation. I needed her to understand that the snake was inside the house, not outside in a Range Rover. I waited. The call came at 7:30 in the morning. My phone vibrated across my desk, shattering the morning calm. The caller ID said Mom. I picked up on the first ring. I did not say hello. You thief, she screamed. Her voice was raw, hysterical. You soulless, greedy thief. Good morning, Mother, I said calmly, taking a sip of my espresso. Do not play games with me, Serena. I know it was you. I know you have a key. I woke up and the safe is open. It is empty. My jewelry, your grandmother's cross, the emergency cash. It is all gone. She was hyperventilating. I could hear the panic in her breath. You took the car yesterday, she sobbed. That was not enough for you. You had to come into my house while I slept. You had to violate my sanctuary. You want to strip me naked. You want to leave me with nothing. How could you? I gave you life. The accusation was so predictable it was almost boring. In Bernice's world, there was only one villain. Even when the evidence was sleeping down the hall, she looked for my shadow. I did not break into your house, Mother, I said. I have been in my apartment all night. Check the security logs in my building if you want. Do not lie to me, she shrieked. Dante would never take the cross. He is a God-fearing man, and Tiffany is a saint. She has been crying with me all morning about how cruel you are. It had to be you. You are the only one who hates us enough to do this. So Tiffany is there with you, I asked. Is she crying right now? Yes, she is holding my hand. She is the daughter you never were. She is praying for strength. I almost laughed. It was a dark, twisted comedy. Tiffany was holding the hand of the woman she had robbed 4 hours ago, praying to a God she didn't believe in while the stolen gold was probably sitting in the trunk of her car, waiting for the pawn shop to open. Mother, I want you to do something for me, I said. I want you to take your phone away from your ear. I want you to look at the message I just sent you. I do not want your messages. I want my jewelry back. Just look at it, Bernice. There was a pause. I heard the rustle of movement. I heard her sniffle. Then silence. I waited. I counted the seconds. 10, 20, 30. I knew exactly what she was watching. The grainy black and white footage. The timestamp in the corner reading so 3:14 a.m. The undeniable profile of her saintly daughter-in-law kneeling in front of the safe. The glimmer of the gold crucifix as it was shoved into the gym bag. The silence stretched on for a minute. Then I heard a sound. It was a gasp, low and painful. I picked up the phone again. Did you see it, Mother? Did you see the saint praying for strength? Her voice was a whisper now. It sounded shattered. That is not real. You made that up. You used a computer. It is the security feed from your bedroom, I said. I installed it 3 years ago when Dante started stealing from your purse. That is Tiffany. That is your daughter-in-law. She robbed you while you were sleeping 5 feet away. She is not crying because she is sad for you. She is crying because she is acting. She is waiting for the right moment to leave you and Dante with nothing. I heard a commotion in the background. I heard Bernice drop the phone. I heard her voice muffled but screaming. Tiffany, what is this? What is in your bag? I heard Tiffany's voice sharp and defensive. What are you talking about, Bernice? You are crazy. Open the bag! Open the trunk of your car! Then there was a scuffle, a door slamming, the sound of a car engine revving hard in the driveway. Tiffany was running. She knew the game was up. I waited for my mother to pick up the phone. I waited for the apology. I waited for the moment of clarity where she realized that I, the daughter she had demonized, was the only one telling her the truth. I waited for her to admit that her golden family was a nest of vipers. Finally, the fumbling sound of the phone being retrieved. She is gone, my mother breathed. She ran. She took the car. I am sorry, Mom, I said, and for a second I actually meant it. I warned you. I told you she was a fraud. I told you she was bleeding you dry. Now maybe you will believe me. Now maybe we can stop this war. There was a long silence on the line. Then my mother's breathing changed. It hitched, but it didn't sound like sorrow. It sounded like rage. This is your fault, she hissed. I blinked. Excuse me. You backed them into a corner, Serena. You took Dante's car. You froze the accounts. You threatened them with jail. What did you expect them to do? People do desperate things when they are being hunted. I could not believe what I was hearing. She was watching a video of a woman robbing her, and she was blaming the person who caught the thief. Tiffany was scared. Bernice continued, her voice gaining that fanatical strength she used to justify her delusions. She probably thought she needed that money to save Dante. She was trying to protect her husband because his own sister was trying to destroy him. She acted out of fear. And you caused that fear. You cannot be serious, I said, my voice rising. She stole your retirement. She stole grandmother's cross. She is not saving Dante. She is leaving him. She is running away with your money. She would not leave him, my mother insisted. She loves him. She just panicked. If you hadn't been so cruel, if you hadn't sent those men to the hotel, none of this would have happened. You made her a criminal, Serena. This sin is on your hands. I stared at the phone. The level of cognitive dissonance was staggering. It was pathological. She would rather rewrite the laws of cause and effect than admit she had backed the wrong horse. She would rather be robbed by a stranger than saved by me. You are unbelievable, I whispered. You are actually defending the woman who robbed you. I am defending my family from an aggressor, she snapped. And right now the only aggressor I see is you. I am going to call the police and tell them Tiffany made a mistake because of stress. I am not going to let you ruin her life too. Click. She hung up. She hung up to call the police and lie for the woman who had just cleared out her life savings. I lowered the phone. I felt a coldness settle over me that was deeper than anger. It was the final death of hope. There was no saving Bernice Williams. She was not a victim. She was a volunteer. She was willing to burn down her own house as long as she could stand in the ashes and blame me for the smoke. Fine, I said to the empty room. You want to protect them? You want to be the martyr. I opened my laptop. I pulled up the file on the mortgage fraud. The file I had hesitated to send. The file that proved Dante and Tiffany had forged Bernice's signature to take out a second mortgage on the house. The house she was currently standing in. The house she thought she owned free and clear. She thought Tiffany stole some jewelry. Wait until she found out Tiffany and Dante had already stolen the roof over her head. I did not hesitate this time. I did not feel a pang of guilt. I felt like a surgeon cutting out gangrene. I attached the file to an email addressed to the fraud department of the mortgage lender. I typed a single sentence in the body of the email. Please find attached evidence of identity theft and mortgage fraud regarding the property at 404 Martin Luther King Drive. I hit send. The bank would move fast. Foreclosure proceedings would start within 48 hours. My mother was going to lose the house. She was going to lose her status. She was going to be on the street. And when she called me crying and begging when she finally realized that her precious family had left her homeless, I was not going to answer. I was done being the villain. Now I was just the spectator. Desperation has a distinct smell, and by Wednesday, my brother Dante and his wife Tiffany reeked of it. They were cornered animals. I had frozen their accounts, seized their vehicles, and exposed their theft to the one person who should have protected them. Logically, this was the moment they should have run. They should have packed whatever they could fit into a backpack and disappeared into the night before the indictments came down. But narcissists do not run when they are cornered. They double down. They convince themselves that they can charm their way out of a burning building. I sat in my office watching the surveillance feed from the exterior cameras of the Legacy Jazz Club. I had changed the locks and updated the security system 3 days ago so they could not get inside. That did not stop them. It only forced them to get creative. They decided that if they could not sell the building, they would sell the idea of it one last time. They launched a campaign called Save the Legacy. It was a masterclass in gaslighting. They printed flyers. They blasted social media. They went door to door in Bronzeville with tears in their eyes. The narrative they spun was simple and devastating. They claimed that I, the evil corporate lawyer's sister, had seized the club through a legal loophole and was planning to bulldoze it the following week to build luxury condos for the white elite. They claimed they were fighting to keep it black-owned. They claimed they were the guardians of our father's soul. The audacity was breathtaking. Tiffany, the woman who had called our heritage the wrong element, was now wearing a head wrap and posting about the importance of cultural preservation. Dante, who had tried to mortgage the property to pay a gambling debt, was quoting Malcolm X. They scheduled a gala. A fundraising gala for the Legal Defense Fund. They set it up right there in the parking lot and the front lawn of the club they were locked out of. They rented a tent. They rented chairs. They borrowed a sound system. They invited the local news. They invited Pastor Jenkins. They invited every grandmother in the neighborhood who had ever loved my father. I did not stop them. My lawyer Marcus wanted to file an injunction to shut it down. I told him no. I told him to let them build the stage. I told him to let them gather the crowd. Because if I shut them down quietly, they would just spin it as another act of oppression. They would become martyrs. I needed them to be exposed. I spent the day of the gala inside the club. I entered through the basement loading dock before dawn so no one would see me. I sat in the control booth overlooking the main stage, watching the monitors that showed the exterior feed. I watched them set up. I saw Tiffany yelling at the rental guys. I saw Dante practicing his sad face in the reflection of the glass doors he could not open. They were expecting a fight. They were expecting the police. When neither showed up, they got confident. They thought I was scared. They thought the public pressure was working. By 6 in the evening, the crowd began to arrive. It was bigger than I expected. Hundreds of people. Good people. People who loved my father and were terrified of losing the neighborhood to gentrification. They did not know they were being played. They did not know their donations were funding a getaway car, not a legal defense. I watched Tiffany working the crowd. She was holding a square reader for credit cards, but she was pushing for cash. Cash is king, she told Mrs. Gable, the retired librarian. The banks are trying to freeze us out. We need cash to pay the lawyers immediately. I checked the timestamp on the video. It was time. I texted Vance. Are the audio feeds synced? Synced and ready, he replied. I have the remote access to the outdoor LED billboard you installed last year. Perfect, I typed. Stand by. I poured myself a glass of water. Below me, outside the brick walls, the sun was setting. The gala was starting. They were about to put on the performance of their lives. And I had the best seat in the house. The atmosphere outside was electric with righteous indignation. Under the white tent, the air was thick with humidity and the smell of desperation masked by cheap cologne. Dante took the stage first. He was wearing a suit that was slightly too big for him now that he had lost weight from the stress, which only added to his image of the suffering servant. He gripped the microphone with both hands, looking out at the sea of faces, his eyes wet with tears that he could summon on command. They locked us out. He choked, pointing at the dark windows of the club behind him. My own sister, the girl I grew up with. She changed the locks on our father's dream. She wants to sell this land to a developer from New York who wants to put up a parking garage. The crowd booed. I watched from the monitors as faces I had known my whole life twisted in anger. They hated me. He had successfully turned the community against me. She does not care about us, Dante screamed, gaining momentum. She lives in a penthouse downtown. She has forgotten where she came from. But I have not forgotten. I am here. I am fighting for you. But we cannot do it alone. The lawyers cost money. The court fees are astronomical. We need to raise $50,000 tonight, or the judge will sign the demolition order on Monday morning. It was a lie. There was no demolition order. There was no developer from New York. There was just a warrant for his arrest and a plane ticket to Costa Rica in his pocket. Tiffany moved through the crowd like a shark in a sundress. She had plastic buckets. Please, she said, grasping hands, looking deep into people's eyes. Anything helps. $5, $10. Save our history. I watched as hard-working people on fixed incomes, people who struggled to pay their own bills, reached into their pockets. I saw crumpled 20s. I saw 50s. I saw envelopes that looked like rent money being dropped into those buckets. The pile of cash was growing. It was sickening. They were strip mining the community's goodwill. And then came the final act. My mother. Bernice Williams walked onto the stage. She moved slowly, leaning on a cane she did not need. The crowd went silent out of respect. She was the deaconess. She was the widow. She took the microphone from Dante. She looked up at the sky, then at the building, then at the crowd. I gave birth to 2 children, she said, her voice trembling. One has a heart of gold, and one has a heart of stone. I never thought I would see the day when my own daughter would try to destroy her father's legacy. I pray for her. I pray every night. But tonight I have to pray for justice. She closed her eyes and raised her hand. Lord, we ask you to strike down the wicked. We ask you to stop the hand of greed. We ask you to protect this son of mine who has given everything to save this place. Punish the wicked, Lord, even if she came from my own womb. A chorus of amens rippled through the tent. That was it. That was the line. She was using God to co-sign a felony. She was praying for my destruction to cover her own shame. I looked at the screen. The buckets were full. They had the money. Vance texted me. Count is estimated at 50 grand. They are looking at the exit. They were about to run. Dante was already checking his watch, inching toward the back of the stage where his rental car was parked. Tiffany was consolidating the cash into a single duffel bag. I put my hand on the control panel. Let there be light, I whispered. I hit the kill switch for the external power. Instantly, the floodlights outside the club went black. The microphone cut out mid-prayer. The music died. The tent was plunged into darkness, illuminated only by the streetlights and the glow of cell phones. The crowd gasped. Confusion rippled through the mass of people. Dante tapped the dead microphone, panic flaring in his eyes. Then I hit the second switch. Mounted on the side of the building directly above the stage was the massive LED screen my father had installed to advertise upcoming shows. It had been dark for months. Now it roared to life with blinding brightness. The white light flooded the stage, pinning Dante and my mother like insects under a microscope. The crowd turned. They looked up. The screen did not show an advertisement. It showed a video file. It was grainy black and white footage. The timestamp was from 3 nights ago. It showed a bedroom. It showed a woman kneeling in front of a floor safe. A hush fell over the crowd. It was absolute silence. On the massive screen, 50 feet wide, everyone in Bronzeville watched Tiffany Davis open her mother-in-law's safe. They watched her dump the jewelry onto the carpet. They watched her shove the church money, the emergency cash, into a gym bag. Then the audio cut in. It was the recording from the spa, my voice clear and sharp. You want to erase us. You want to take a black space and turn it white. And then Tiffany's voice amplified to a boom that shook the parking lot. I want to make it profitable. And if that means getting rid of the old men playing saxophones, history does not pay the bills. It attracts the wrong element. The crowd did not boo this time. They gasped. It was a collective intake of breath that sounded like the air being sucked out of the room. I switched the feed. Now it was the phone call. My mother's voice. She would not leave him. She loves him. You backed them into a corner. You made her a criminal. The video cut to the bank security footage I had subpoenaed. Dante standing at the teller window, the timestamp matching the withdrawal. Then the final image. A split screen. On one side, the fake demolition order they had posted on Facebook. On the other side, the one-way plane tickets to Costa Rica purchased on Dante's credit card 3 hours ago. I picked up the microphone in the control booth. I flipped the switch that routed my voice to the emergency PA system outside. "Good evening, Bronzeville," I said. My voice echoed across the parking lot, godlike and terrifying. "I am Serena Williams Davis, and I think it is time you got your money back." The spell broke. The crowd turned. They were not looking at the screen anymore. They were looking at the stage. They were looking at the woman who called them the wrong element. They were looking at the man who had stolen their rent money. Dante looked at Tiffany. Tiffany looked at the bag of cash. My mother looked at the ground, wishing it would swallow her whole. And then the siren started. Not one siren. 5. They were coming from every direction. The gala was over. The reckoning had arrived. The wail of the sirens cut through the humid night air, and for the first time in her life, Tiffany Davis stopped talking. The parking lot was suddenly bathed in the strobing red and blue lights of 5 squad cars and 2 unmarked black SUVs. This was not a noise complaint. This was a raid. I watched from the control booth as the crowd parted instinctively, creating a wide path for the agents who moved with the heavy purpose of federal authority. They were not wearing standard police uniforms. They wore navy blue windbreakers with 3 yellow letters emblazoned on the back that made Dante's knees buckle before they even reached the stage. FBI. Tiffany tried to run. It was a pathetic attempt. She hitched up her designer dress and scrambled toward the back of the tent where the cash buckets were stashed, but she did not make it 3 steps. 2 agents intercepted her. I saw the moment the reality hit her. I saw the color drain from her face as an agent spun her around and slammed her against the support pole of the tent. "Tiffany Davis, you are under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit identity theft." The agent's voice was loud enough to be heard over the murmuring crowd. "We have a warrant for your arrest regarding the transfer of funds from offshore accounts and the fraudulent solicitation of charitable donations." She screamed as the handcuffs clicked shut. It was not a scream of fear, but of pure rage. She looked at Dante, who was standing frozen center stage, and she spat at him. "You idiot!" she shrieked as they dragged her away. "You told me she wouldn't find out. You told me she was stupid." Dante did not answer her because he was too busy crying. The local police officers who had arrived with the FBI were moving toward him. He looked at our mother, who was standing like a statue amidst the chaos, clutching her chest. "Mama," he wailed, his voice cracking like a child's. "Mama, do not let them take me. Tell them it was a mistake. Tell them I am a good boy." But Bernice Williams said nothing. She could not speak. She could only watch as the officers grabbed her golden child by the arms. They did not treat him gently. He had violated a court order. He had committed bank fraud. He was a fugitive. They bent him over the hood of the patrol car right in front of the congregation he had tried to swindle. "I am sorry," Dante sobbed as they shoved him into the back of the car. "I am sorry, Mama." And just like that, they were gone. The architects of my destruction, the people who had tried to steal my father's legacy, they were in cages where they belonged. The crowd stood in stunned silence. The show was over, but nobody moved. They were waiting for the curtain call. They were looking at the woman left alone on the stage. My mother slowly sank to her knees. Her expensive hat tipped forward and fell onto the dirty pavement, rolling away into the darkness. She did not reach for it. She looked small. She looked old. The deaconess of Bronzeville. The woman who judged everyone from her high horse was now kneeling in the dirt, surrounded by the people she had tried to trick. I turned away from the monitors. I walked down the stairs from the control booth. I pushed open the heavy steel doors of the club and stepped out into the night air. The crowd saw me. A ripple of whispers went through them. Serena. It is Serena. They parted from me without a word. I walked through the path they made, my heels clicking on the asphalt, a steady rhythm of justice. I walked straight to the stage. I walked up the stairs. I stood over my mother. She looked up at me. Her mascara was running down her face in black rivulets. Her eyes were red and swollen. She looked at me, and for the first time in 32 years, I did not see arrogance. I saw terror. She reached out and grabbed the hem of my skirt. Her grip was weak, desperate. "Serena," she whispered. "Serena, please." I did not know. I did not know they were criminals. I thought they were trying to save us. "You knew Mother," I said, my voice calm and cold. "You knew Tiffany was stealing. You saw the video. You knew Dante was a liar. You heard the recordings. You knew everything. You just did not care. You did not care as long as you got to keep your house and your reputation. You did not care as long as I was the one paying the price." She sobbed, burying her face in the fabric of my dress. "I am sorry," she moaned. "I am so sorry, baby. I was wrong. I was so wrong. Please forgive me. Please do not let them take my house. Please do not leave me alone." I looked down at her. I remembered the slap. I remembered the lies on Facebook. I remembered her telling me I was dead to her. I felt a ghost of the old pain, the little girl who just wanted her mother to love her. But that little girl was gone. She had died in a VIP room at the Palmer House. I gently pulled my skirt from her grip. I took a step back, putting distance between us. "You are not wrong, Mother," I said, my voice carrying over the silent crowd. "You are just greedy. You loved the idea of wealth more than you loved your own daughter. You loved the image of a perfect family more than the reality of a good one. And now you have exactly what you paid for." She looked up at me, her mouth opening to beg again, but I cut her off. "The price of greed is loneliness, Bernice. And you have earned every second of it." I turned my back on her. I did not look at the neighbors who were shaking their heads in disgust. I did not look at the pastor who was refusing to make eye contact with her. I walked to the microphone stand where Dante had stood only minutes before. I tapped the mic. The sound echoed through the parking lot. "I am sorry for the disturbance, everyone," I said, my voice steady. "My father, James Davis, built this place to be a sanctuary. He built it for joy. He built it for music. And for the last 6 months it has been a place of lies. That ends tonight." I pointed to the doors of the club. "The bar is open," I announced. "The band is ready. And tonight the drinks are on the house. Welcome to the legacy." A cheer went up from the crowd. It started small, but it grew. It was a sound of relief, a sound of community being restored. People started moving toward the doors. They stepped around my mother, who was still weeping on the stage as if she were a rock in a river. They flowed past her, ignoring her tears, eager to wash the taste of the night out of their mouths with good bourbon and better music. I walked back into the club. The air conditioning hit my face, cooling the heat of the night. I walked past the bar where the bartenders were already pouring drinks. I walked past the stage where the band was tuning up the saxophone player, blowing a low, mournful note that turned into a jazzy riff. I climbed the stairs to the private office on the second floor. My father's office. It smelled of old leather and pipe tobacco. I sat down in his chair. It was big for me, but it felt right. I reached into the bottom drawer and pulled out a bottle of vintage red wine and a single glass. I poured myself a drink. The liquid was dark and rich. I took a sip. It tasted like victory. I swiveled the chair around to face the wall behind the desk. There was a large framed photograph there. It was my father standing in front of the club on opening day 40 years ago. He was young and strong, and he was smiling. I raised my glass to him. "We did it, Daddy," I whispered into the quiet room. "We saved your soul." Downstairs, the music started. A bass line thumping like a heartbeat. The sound of laughter and clinking glasses drifted up through the floorboards. The legacy was alive. The parasite had been removed. The wound was clean. I took another sip of wine and closed my eyes. For the first time in 6 months, I did not feel angry. I did not feel tired. I felt peace. Outside, my mother was alone in the dark, but in here the lights were on, and the music was just beginning. Serena's journey teaches a painful but liberating truth: sharing DNA does not guarantee loyalty. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect us are the ones we need protection from. Her mother and brother weaponized family to manipulate and steal, proving that toxic entitlement often hides behind the mask of tradition. Real strength is not about enduring abuse to keep the peace. It is about having the courage to enforce boundaries even when your voice shakes. Serena showed us that when you finally stand in your truth, you do not lose family, you only lose the parasites that were draining you dry. Have you ever had to become the villain in someone else's story just to save yourself? Share your experience in the comments below and subscribe for more stories of justice served cold.